Hi. In this episode, I get to be the guest on the Synergy podcast. Lisa and Ryan, the hosts, invited me to talk about nature as a catalyst for change in work and personal lives. So we discussed the old topic of innovation and leadership through a novel lens of co-creating with nature. It was a lot of fun to flow with Lisa and Ryan, and I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as we did. Have fun listening.
Because these people can really appreciate, and they can appreciate if they are innovating, if they're looking for a new solution, then they need to be able to recognize patterns. And there are a lot of different patterns, but all of the patterns are present in nature.
Synergy Podcast is a place where we flip the script on how we move through the world, at work, in life, and within. Let's get curious, uncomfortable, and find out what's on the other side of default. So today we are looking at a popular theme through an unpopular lens. Nature has been innovating for billions of years, and we all know that it adapts, it evolves, it collaborates and regenerates without overthinking change the way we humans do. And today we're exploring how ecosystems and nature can teach us to be more fluid in our careers, in leadership, and in the systems that we build. And to dive deeper into this beautiful connection between nature and human innovation, we are joined today by Yulia Bogdanova, who brings such a rich perspective on learning from the natural world. Yulia, thank you for joining us. Can you briefly introduce yourself, tell our listeners about who you are, what you do, and what you would like them to know about you?
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be here today. Thanks for the invitation. Looking forward to the chat, as I know they're fun.
They are.
I would introduce myself as someone who is after adventure all the time. I'm thirsty for adventure. And for a long time, it was very annoying because I would go after the next shining object. I have done so many things. I did the corporate world in Silicon Valley. I did Greenpeace. I did then a lot of freelancing in different capacities. And I could never stop. I was always looking for the next thing. Some of the pivots on that journey that I remember, one of them I was on an expedition with a guy whose name is Wim Hof, and he is also known as the Iceman. And so the point was to climb a mountain with minus 15 degrees, I think it was, in the Polish mountains. And that was the first time, I didn't know how I was there, how I ended up there. I just did, and I was resisting this. This just, it's not for me. And then by the end of it, I was very high. And I couldn't remember any time before in my life where I felt so good. I just felt so good with myself. I just felt so good in the moment. And that set me on this journey of finding out why. Basically, one of the topics that I'm very passionate about is humans and how we are wired and why we do things the way we do. And my doorway into humans is not through thinking, but rather through body and somatics and breath, as Wim Hof demonstrated. And that was one thing. And then the recent one was my groundbreaking discovery of nature, or rather what it means to have a real relationship with nature. Because actually I come from a village. I grew up in the Soviet Union, so I was, planting things, and I did a lot of forced labor on land.
Same here.
But I had no clue what it is, what it feels like to have a deep relationship with nature.
Yeah.
And that happened for me over a year ago. And I did some training, did a year-long program where things happened to me that, or resolved, that I had never hoped would. And this was just like in 3 days. And it was the point where like a light bulb went off for me, and everything that I knew about humans or everything I did as a coach before, I thought, well, you know what, I'm gonna take it into the natural settings.
Wow. What a
That
journey.
I remember, well, I think when we were previously chatting about what we were going to talk about today, you mentioned bringing this passion, this discovery, this emergent innovation for your life. You wanted to share it with others. Could you say a little bit more about how you brought it to the lives of others or companies or just people in your general social circle?
So how it happens is like pretty simple. You go in nature, and that nature doesn't even have to be a forest. It can be like your garden or a park. And then together, through certain steps of facilitation, which are related to your state, mental state, for example, shifting perspective, having certain goals in place, having what's called certain routines in place. And then you just discover, you spend time in an open, relaxed state where things start emerging and shifting.
Yeah.
And, it's like, it's a little bit like sensing into the future or sensing your way into innovation. Something in the corporate environment is very, I guess people are probably afraid of it because they don't understand why. We think we should have everything planned. And so this doesn't fit. But I do know companies that do take this approach, and it's beautiful. It's also gives you a break out of the digital world, and kind of like brings you back to your humanness and the relationship between humans, also facilitated by this container of nature.
Yulia, what you shared gave me such an interesting image that, or understanding of what you do and why it brings these different experiences is you are using nature as a catalyst of different processes, right? I recently heard from someone that like a coach can be a catalyst, or a therapist can be a catalyst, or in your instance, nature is this catalyst, which means it doesn't enter the reaction itself, but without it, the reaction is not possible, right? Like in chemistry. So is this the right way I see it? Because as if you say people are learning something or uncovering something just because they are in the nature.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yes. A catalyst is a good one. And I did also, at one point, my goal was to be a catalyst myself. And then now I shifted, and I'm providing this place or asking nature to be a catalyst. And well, it all goes to the things that we often hear, like, oh, humans are part of nature, right? But they're a little bit evasive because there is a glass wall behind us, because this relationship has changed, especially in the last couple hundred of years, and there is a disconnect. But what I learned during the last year is there are very simple ways to connect and to be welcome and to, be able to see patterns, let's say. I think one of the really valuable things that these experiences bring into corporate life is about pattern recognition system. People can really appreciate, and they can appreciate if they are innovating, if they're looking for a new solution, then they need to be able to recognize patterns. And there are a lot of different patterns, but all of the patterns are present in nature. So you can either learn a lot of different categories and strive to be a specialist, or you go to the source and learn to recognize patterns from the master.
I keep coming back to this thought, and I've said this before. I like to think in metaphors, and one phrase comes to mind. This all makes so much sense because trees don't hold staff meetings. There's a hidden structure that must be explored, discovered, and requires or beckons one to be present with it. And it reminds me of what the Japanese call Shinrin-yoku, taking in the forest atmosphere. It's not a rigorous practice, but it's a practice of presence in nature, which, who knew, benefits physically and creates mental well-being. And I'm really curious because when we're more present, when we're happier, we become 30% more efficient. And something that you mentioned last time is our brains become 30% more efficient. Something you said last time we were chatting was about leveraging not only self-discovery in nature, but greater connection with other beings, whether it be coworkers or friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's also something you're saying. Well, now we are outside, we're on a walk. So what's the plan? Like, what do we do? How do we work at it and be really effective? Well, let's play and have some fun.
Yeah.
It's like especially I'm also a big fan of play. I've been doing improv now for 2 years, and there is something so liberating when you do something stupid in front of everyone else, and then everyone does the same, and then we're all on the same page, and then from there's nothing more to lose, and we're just, whoo, that's so fun. Yeah, and Ryan, as you said, it's exactly like that. What you want is to get into the state of presence and of relaxation, because this is a very important condition to be able to recognize any patterns. Because humans, one of the reasons why humans are distant from nature, especially from plants, is because we operate at very different speeds, our nervous systems. And it's a fact that actually plants also have nervous system, and they have senses, more senses than humans, or different senses at least. And so we come there and, we're living at a very high speed. And then we come into the forest, and there, like, everything is so chill there. And there is no chance you're going to recognize or see anything. And the point is to stay present, to be idle, to find a way to really relax into this slow state when things start revealing themselves to you. And like you can spot these patterns in this tree. Like one of my favorite research trees now is birch, or anything, right? It can be facilitated towards different goals.
Yulia, it's so amazing what you are sharing, and it resonates so much. And I have some aha moments like, okay, now I see, because I love spending time in the nature. Ryan knows every day I have my 1 hour with my dog in a wild park not far from my home. I keep sending sometimes pictures of how amazed I am. For example, yesterday I spotted two pheasants fighting. Oh my God, it was the best experience maybe of the whole day, because how immersed I am in that moment. So it's like, okay, why not just live watching pheasants then, if it was possible? But when I noticed that when I spend time in nature, with others or on my own, it's not about performing anymore. It's about being. Like, it somehow reconnects you automatically with the present moment, unless you are so much in your mind that you even don't notice your surroundings. But if you notice your surroundings, there is no other way but to reconnect with what's around you, with the nature. And so I'm still leaning towards this nature as a catalyst for some reason, because now I can imagine that when you take people to the forest or to the park, and they become present, because it's different from the office. They're in nature, it's new environment, they become present. And you said also, they need to relax, they need to play, although they say, okay, how we do it, what's the task, what we should work on, what's the plan? And there is no plan. And so if you could tell a bit more maybe about how innovation appears from that state or from that environment that you create, and how it's different from other ways people try to innovate.
Yes. On the one hand, there is no plan, maybe in the sense that we're used to, but on the other hand, there is, of course, a plan, and things are happening. So I think a lot before what's going to happen, and how we're going to get into that state, hopefully, which is so conducive to innovation. And I think, talking about innovation, what the dominant view of innovation is that it's kind of this hero paradigm, right? It's where people come, they decide to come up with a new solution, and then they brainstorm, they use their brain, brainstorm and use their brain, and the solution is there. So what I'm a very, very big fan of, and I mentioned I'm a part of this community that's called World Makers, run by two innovation professors from Canada. And what they suggest is a very, very different paradigm for innovation and creativity. And they suggest that it's never people who create. It's this process of co-creation, much like going on in nature at all times. And what this means is, we think that it's our thought that now somehow emerged. But actually, we don't know whose thought it is and where it came from. And it can be from briefing in a group, it can be from your surroundings. Of course, when the surroundings are different, then the thoughts would be different. Or if you use certain tools, instruments, they create what's called affordances. They afford you something. And they change you in the process. So this process of innovation, as I see it now, with the help of this community, is kind of like a constant creative mishmash, co-emergence. And big part of letting it happen is kind of like learning to surrender, but also learning to not only think in the process. Because one more thing that I'll say about it is, let's say there is this new solution that people need to come up with, and it's not there. It's just not there. So, well, how do you think about something that's not there? It's not possible. And mostly when people brainstorm around the known solutions. So it's around the same loops that keep repeating. So again, what emergent innovation would mean that when you don't know something, you mostly rely on your senses, on your intuition, and on play. And so these immersive experiences of being in nature, of playing, of engaging, of tinkering with things, this is something that creates foundation for later brainstorming things and, creating abstractions and using your mind more actively.
I keep coming back to a thought about what it was like to work in, corporate environments. Cubicle land is sometimes what it's referred to. And it evoked this thought of maybe predictability isn't actually an enemy, but it's a comfort zone in disguise, which what you're describing by going into nature with colleagues or social connections is really about breaking cognitive inertia and discovering opportunities and tangents that lead one deeper into their own thinking while looking outwardly at the objective world, but filtering it through different parts of their mind and then relaying it to others so that an idea doesn't emerge from nothingness. It builds over time. It may not be the right solution at the right time, but it's innovation and progress. It's not an accomplishment, it's shared fulfillment.
Yeah, totally.
And you know what also, like while you were telling about this emergent innovation, what came to my mind is, and when you said that, okay, usually people, when they brainstorm and try to innovate, they're using some old idea, something known. And it reminded me of AI because it also uses only the known information that's already there. And so this emergent innovation, it can be something that will be needed these days with the rise of AI and some repeated ideas, so to speak. This could be one of the ways to keep innovating in an effective way. Just a thought.
Yeah. I also come from a place of very deep passion and very deep love for nature. And it may sound cliche, but it's especially this last year, I just cannot help myself. I cannot imagine myself doing anything different at this point. And it's as if that search or that quest that I was on, it's now came to some point where I just feel content that, I just need to understand what more I need to do to create the things that I like. On the one hand, AI, and there is this pull, I think a major pull into AI that flattens our minds.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It flattens.
And on the other hand, there is this, I think, need to really create solutions that are for nature. And what I mean is now what's done in the field of, let's say, sustainability, it's people come together in a boardroom or in an office and it's like, yeah, let's just come up with a solution. How about, we do this? And it's a little bit like, there was a time in my childhood when I had no clue what mango is, but somehow I had heard a lot about it. And then at one point I had a chance to taste it. And then I was like, wow, it was nothing like I had imagined to myself. And so I was trying to, understand mango with my brain, which is not possible, sadly. You have to be immersed in the world of mangoes to get this idea. And I feel like, a lot of those innovative solutions, and I know also this because I worked at Greenpeace, and so I know this this field a little bit, a lot of those is actually pure greenwashing, and they have nothing to do with solutions that would take us into a different place, into a better future. I feel it's an illusion to think that we can think our way out. I think we have to really like sense into it, engage, immerse ourselves, our way out of here, and connect to this, to this being that we're solving for.
I keep coming back to that brief discussion we had about water. And, we've talked about trees, we've talked about gardens, but behind every tree and garden is water. And it makes me think of Bruce Lee's quote, "Be like water, my friend." But the quote is actually much longer than most people attribute to the memes that are spread wildly around the internet. It talks about the transformation of water, its ability to move around boulders, to reflect sunlight, to create ripples as to move through barriers that it encounters. And what you just said about innovation is typically thought of is really just it can be turned into a song, and I'm sure there's one that exists. It's all been done before. We're just tweaking it and applying it a different way. But what happens when we step back and think differently about our own thinking, meta thinking, in a place that has outlived us by eons? There's a grain of truth there, and I think water is one of the most fluid sources of inspiration as we move forward towards emergent innovation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know it's one of the topics of my research nowadays that I'm very excited about. What can water teach us about fluidity at the organizational level and also at personal level? And exactly, water is so versatile. And there are also a couple of things that for me were a big insight when I talked to someone from the field of regenerative agriculture. And basically, unlike sustainability, regenerative agriculture is that space which believes that by immersing themselves in nature, connecting and observing, this is how they, let's say, innovate. And one of the things that Marius told me about water was that water is not designed for having. So water basically,
Love that.
we are 80% of water by weight and 99% by molecule count. And this water that's in us is constantly exchanging, right? This water is constantly circulating. We cry, the water leaves us. Where does it go? Well, into the ocean, into a river, into the atmosphere, into soil, I don't know. And some other water comes into us. And so for me, somehow this characteristic of water has created so much like insight and thinking about it, because in organizations, one of the things that needs to happen before any breakthroughs is just playing around. And this was these professors that I referred to, they call it engage. Engage is basically playing and being very fluid in the process, in our identities, but also different teams and different groups and different departments where they constantly exchange. They wear different hats. And it's also reminded me a little bit like in the kindergarten. If you were at kindergarten, I remember myself at one moment, like I am nursing a baby, and the other moment I'm driving a truck, and it's something like that. It's a stage that is like tinkering, very important. And this is by sensing into into our waters that are not for having, and that constantly living and coming back, living and coming back, we can actually experience fluidity and what it is to wear different hats and not to hold on, this is my role, this is my project, this is my discovery, this is my idea.
It's so interesting what you've just shared, and I had a few ideas at the same time. One of the ideas that was inspired by what you shared is this feeling of through understanding that, well, how much we are water and how much it's a huge part of our life, that it creates this image of interconnectedness of everyone and everything through this water. This is one thing. But then another idea also that came to my mind is about this rigid image versus fluidity. And this is what people are doing these days. They want to create some image and then protect it by all means. I don't know why we are taught to do this. Who started this game of trying to create something and sustain it? And if something falls apart, it's a tragedy, while in nature it's a part of the process. There have to be regeneration. Something has to disappear or get destroyed for new and better thing to appear. So why do people, when there are transitions, when there are changes in their life, and this was literally the topic of our previous conversation, why people go crazy? Like everything's falling apart, they lose their identity. And learning to be fluid, it's not only about innovation, it's about adaptability and knowing you can rebuild yourself in any other shape or form, because you can be so many more than just that image that you've created for yourself. So insightful for me, this conversation about water.
I just love that quote. I actually wrote it down on a little sticky note. Water is not for having.
Mm.
It's like, it's a gift received and a gift given. And it is cyclical. I remember that I think it was like fifth grade. We were looking at these diagrams of how rain happens. It absorbed from the ocean, it comes and hits the mountains, pours, and then it flows into rivers and goes back to the ocean, and then the cycle repeats itself. And what you talked about was it actually does that for us, with us. And I like, there's this quote that I like, you can't pour from an empty pot. And one of the things about water is it's so fluid because it's so interconnected and there's such a high density of it. And I wonder if we could explore how we bring interconnectedness to nature to evolve our own relationships with colleagues and with friends. I was standing on my porch the other day wondering about boredom and realized I'm more bored inside than I was standing and looking at birds. I lost track of time. What would be different if someone else was there staring at the birds with me? Would it be boring? Probably not. I just wonder what sort of depth of conversation and connection we establish.
Oh, you said something. You mentioned birding. I just watched a 2-hour documentary by two guys who there is apparently in the United States, there is now this huge interest for birding, and people are very competitive about it. So they went into this for a year, and that is just so many. It's called whatever, about extreme birding. So what they do actually to track the bird. And one of the things is they are never bored with watching birds and tracking birds for hours. But I mean, of course, nature has so much to teach us about interconnectedness, because what is nature? It's interconnectedness. And for example, the tree that I mentioned before, birch, that I've been kind of like researching and connecting with. And so one of the things that happens is that in my forest, for example, that you can see a lot of birches on the soil. And also, you can recognize because by the color, of course, but other than that, birches have a lot of partnerships with mushrooms, with different mushrooms. Couple of varieties are specifically exclusive, they have exclusive relationships with birches. And, what birch is about, it's a so-called pioneer tree, and it makes way for other trees and plants where forest was destroyed or the ecosystem was destroyed. And how does it do it? So it has quite a short life, and already at the beginning of life, if you look at it, how does it invite mushrooms in? It's by having all those kind of like cut through that are bigger than on other trees in the bark. So there's like this whole system of the birch fulfilling its mission that starts from the very start, and it does not do that alone. Nothing is done alone in the forest. And of course, speaking about mushrooms and fungi, right? They're the ultimate connectors in the forest. And I just also watched a documentary where they say that fungi have been there over 2 billion years, and it's half of the history of this planet. And what they did basically is that they enabled life to leave the ocean, and the current hypothesis is they ground the rocks into soil, and then gradually they help the life to get established. So nothing happens on its own or just with only one participant. Yeah.
Yeah, and same for humans, right? It's like in our individualistic world, we really pause to understand that those individualistic things we still do for others, at least for others to see if this is success, right? Or through others who help us achieve success. So it's never like this. And it's also great to see that people are also moving away from understanding that, okay, I have to just do things for myself on my own. And more, I think after COVID, it took rise, like this movement of people looking for communities or getting together just because we are social beings as well.
Can't let this go. But when you were talking about extreme birding a few minutes ago, this intrusive thought came out of nowhere, and I thought back to your mountaineering story. So I was like, wait, are these people climbing Mount McKinley and looking and baiting birds so they can take photos? Like almost like the X Games of birding. So that's my intrusive thought. But I was really curious about what are some practical things that people can take that first step into experiencing nature as a catalyst for thinking differently or doing differently.
It's actually very so these things, they're so simple, I guess, that people maybe discount them. And they are so in the system, in the program that I've been in about as a wilderness educator and as a naturalist. So reconnecting to nature is done through routines. Basically, the point is to start recognizing patterns. Let's say now I have a neighbor that I know nothing about. Let's say, he got a new haircut. Probably I will not notice it. Or he got a new t-shirt or something. I wouldn't give a... And so this is how it is with nature. We come and we forgot what it is to recognize nature's patterns, to, see something in the leaves, to be present. And so I was like, okay, we go for a walk with our headphones on or without headphones with the dog, which I also do all the time. And we don't see anything. Well, no, sometimes when it's so sunny and so beautiful, I was like, oh, look at this picture, we have to share it. But maybe I'm exaggerating. But the point is to just spend unstructured time that would allow you to develop a relationship with this neighbor. And what it means, for example, in practice is what how I do it and how I teach others do it, is there's something like a sit place. That's a routine. You come, you choose a place, and it can be even in your garden, and you spend time there doing nothing, just looking around. And the first time, 15 minutes, probably you're not gonna see anything. And then you come again, and then you come again, and then you come again. And then, whoa, all of a sudden, it's like you discover something and you stare at this leaf, which you didn't notice before, and you notice this intricate ornament, and you notice a flower or an insect, or when you see it like that, the wildlife also reveal themselves to you because you're no longer so you can have really beautiful encounters with birds or with animals depending on where you are. And all of a sudden you develop this interest, this natural curiosity where you are interested because you see things. And it's like someone, for example, who, I don't know, plays poker and wants to talk to me about poker. If I don't know anything about poker, it's like, yeah, I played, a couple of times. Who cares about your strategies, right? It's just immersing yourself in this. So it's having a place where you sit on a regular basis and doing that for a year will work miracles. Then when walking, doing something that's called unstructured walks without a goal. This can be such an adventure, or this can turn into such an adventure where you start trusting yourself and your intuition. And so when you come without a phone, you give yourself, or with a phone that's switched off, you give yourself at least 2 hours, and then they just wander off. And you allow yourself to be led by something that's unique to you, because also our nervous systems kind of are unique in how they interact with the environment. So some people will see one thing, the other people another thing. And that's also in group work or in teamwork. It's really interesting because different people spot different things. And, it's a very rich discussion emerges. Then like another routine is then telling stories. So telling stories is really important for integration, for not letting it just kind of like sit there, for giving some flow to the water, some movement. And storytelling, it's just about basically what happened, what was it today that somehow incited my curiosity. And as you get into it, you can tell stories even about those tiny things and leaves. And it sounds again like a cliche, but the whole universe is reveal yourself to it. And in that also, so your pattern recognition system becomes, so you see this thing and, you connected to, something in your work, in your hobbies, in art, in science, and a lot of different things. So those are 3, and there are around 10 routines that
You can go on and on, right? But thanks for sharing those. I already have some ideas what I will implement on my walks. And what resonated with me is you mentioned this routine to just sit in the same place every day. But I noticed that when I just pause for long enough in one place, I start noticing some insects, some plants, some the way how sun plays on those leaves and shadows, and I notice like the whole universe within that little spot sometimes. Or on one, if I pause long enough, because sometimes I like taking photos, so it takes you. If you want to take a really good photo, you need to be attentive, and then I start looking at the details of a flower, its patterns. So, and then, for me, it's like one world, small world in this bigger world. So these things happen to me, maybe not as often or as intentionally, because I think I need to do more of it now that you reminded, because I really feel some kind of high out of it when I have these discoveries kind of on my own. So I think, and those techniques that you shared, I mean, they're so unique. This is nothing I ever heard anyone sharing. And I think people can benefit from it so much because, everyone hears those typical routines, everyone is sharing and we have to do blah, blah, blah. But it's nothing as deep as what you are talking about. And probably because what you are like, this catalyst part is the nature. And I think this is the biggest thing that we can benefit from, but we even don't try to. We try to think our way into things instead of feeling or being.
So one of the things that for people is really attractive, for people who are not very much into this and don't believe into this, is getting their focus back. Because this is what you get. And like you just notice how your mental state changes. And I noticed very big shifts. And it's not that before I didn't care about my state. In fact, I'd been caring about my state so much that I did all those adventures. And it's as if something was always missing. So I would breathe myself into this generative state, open, but then it would go. It wouldn't allow me this kind of like sustainability. And also the focus, this flow of life that we have right now, that is really fast, it just pulls you in a very powerful way. And I think you cannot really resist it on your own. You have to have allies that give you their power. And literally, you go there, and this is your best ally for focus, for spotting details, for having this open mind that is not troubled by like what am I looking, a lot of future and past questions about yourself that even we know that they are not relevant at all, but still cannot help going there. So it's just really powerful to have nature as alive for your speed of nervous system, for focus, and your mental abilities and mental health.
Yeah, so powerful. And again, I think you did mention the word speed of the life that we have now, and the nature speed, which is more natural for us, right? So I think just being there, it automatically slows you down if you're observing it. You just get connected with that pace. So amazing, so many insights. Thanks for sharing, Yulia. Thank you for being with us. This is a very refreshing topic, and I think we need to invite you one more time because so many more questions we have. But I'm sure our listeners will benefit a lot from what you shared. And if our listeners want to find out more about you, where they can find you, can you share a bit?
So where I write on a weekly basis is in Substack, and my blog is called Breath of Life, and it's Yulia Bogdanova. And I also have a podcast that's more, let's say, nature oriented, although now the two flows in my life, this like corporate work that I do and nature, they're merging into each other, which makes me very happy.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was a lot of fun. I like this unstructured and playful atmosphere.
That's what we're about. And our
That's
podcast.
what we're good at.
Yeah. So thanks so much, Yulia, and I hope listeners will enjoy this episode with you, and take care. Thank you, everyone.
Nature has been innovating for billions of years, adapting, evolving, collaborating, and regenerating, without ever overthinking change the way we do. Pushing harder doesn't necessarily create emergent innovation. Emergent innovation evolves from co-creation, learning from natural systems to inspire our community, and reminding us to never work alone. Forests don't hold staff meetings, yet somehow they thrive. Water flows, gives, and receives. Tides come and go upon the shores. Even in stillness, everything moves. Perhaps predictability is comfort dressed as control. So what if we stopped trying to master nature and started learning from it? What would our senses respond to if collaboration flowed like water? How can we create a world which remembers that emergent innovation happens through community? Until next time, be goodish, be safe, and be kind.
Thank you for listening to The Breath of Life. It means a lot to me. If something in this conversation touched you, consider sharing it with someone and connecting in the process. Follow The Breath of Life for new episodes and join me on Substack, where I publish my weekly writings. The link is in the show notes. Till next time.